All right. So, welcome to another episode of Oops, Girl, is that legal? I'm supposed to be pulling you out, girl. Let me remove her and then I can introduce her. But I wanted to welcome you to another episode of Girl, is that legal? Today, we're going to be talking with attorney Sue Ann Robinson. Attorney Sue Ann is the legal advocate for the family of Shanquella Robinson. And she is literally fresh off the plane from Mexico, where, of course, she was working on their case. And she's going to speak with us, answer a few questions, and we're going to be able to find out straight from the source what's really going on and how we can support the family. So I'm going to run the countdown to give everyone a chance to join. Oh, my eyelashes are already falling off. Let's get the countdown going. And then, here we go. We're going to get ready to go. And we are back. All right, so we are back with attorney Sue Ann. I'm going to bring her up in just a second. Just want to give people a chance to come on in. Great. Make sure you can hear me. Let me get a little closer to the mic. All right, Sue Ann, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Hey.
How's it going?
It is going. What's up, sister-in-law?
Well, thank you. She's referring to my new engagement. I'm still getting used to it. Definitely still getting used to it. Yeah, there's so much to talk about on that one. And actually, he and I started a separate channel to follow our relationship journey. That's my fiance, Rashid. And that channel is called Ready to TWO, Ready to Wed. So you can definitely head over there. Please like and subscribe as well. But Sue Ann, I just want to jump into this. But first, of course, I want to introduce you. So you may be familiar with Sue Ann from various different high-profile cases that she's worked on in the civil rights realm. She actually works frequently with attorney Ben Crump, who's obviously nationally and internationally known for his civil rights work. They work co-counsel actually on this case, Shanquella Robinson's family's case, among others. Right, Sue Ann?
Yes. The man, myth, the legend.
The legend, yes. And Sue Ann is based in Florida. However, it doesn't matter where your case is located. If it's in one of the areas that she practices, she can help you no matter where you're located. Correct, Sue Ann?
Yes, I'll help you out.
I found this on the web.
Awesome. Hold on. There we go. I just had a call come in, so had to turn on the do not disturb. Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Sue Ann's practice areas include civil rights. Hold on, I have my notes here. They include civil rights. They include gun violence, as well as criminal defense work as well. And again, you started your career in Florida. Is that correct?
I did.
Yes. And did you work with Ben Crump when you were like a younger baby attorney, or how did that relationship come about?
That relationship came about. Definitely, I was the president of a bar association, and right when Trayvon Martin happened, and I brought him down here to kind of garner the Black legal community to support him, support the case, support the family. And that's how we initially met 12 years ago. And so I would say maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, he asked me to be of counsel for his firm, really just when he was kicking off a national civil rights practice. I resisted at first, but if you've ever met Ben, he's very convincing, very motivating, and of course, extremely inspirational. And at that time in my career, I definitely was looking to do something more for us. So it was a great opportunity to do well and do good. So I never looked back.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned that you are of counsel. Can you describe what that means?
Of counsel to a firm means that you are essentially a co-counsel. You work with the firm for a majority of cases, but I still have my own law practice here based in South Florida.
Awesome. Yes. And her law firm is called Frontline Law. Frontline Law. And she is actually the founder of Frontline Law. So definitely Google that. We'll put the links in the description below as well. So just to get started, let's go ahead and jump into this because I know, like I said, I know you are tired from your flight and you have so much going on. This has been a busy week for you as well. You may not recognize her from this yet, but Sue Ann is actually also going to be. Can I say it, or do you want to
Yes,
keep it quiet?
you can.
Okay. She is going to be one of the new singles on the upcoming season of Ready to Love Miami.
Right.
Yes. I wish I had my drum beat. Dun, 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 dun. So we're going to get to see if whether Sue Ann, in addition to balancing these cases, doing this great work, gets to find love as well. Can you give us any hints or clues, Sue Ann?
You have to tune in. Can't give you no spoilers. Come on.
And that's a dating show on the television network OWN. If you've never seen it, check it out. I was on the show, et cetera, et cetera. So we're excited for you for that. Now let's jump into it. Now, there are so many different myths and versions, and honestly, a lot of fake news going on with this case.
Right.
And as a result, I didn't want to jump into it. I was getting a lot of comments and people were asking me like, hey, are you going to cover it? And I absolutely have wanted to cover it, but I wanted to do it responsibly. And I didn't want to just be one of the bloggers who tries to be the first to release some salacious story that's not true.
Right.
Particularly because I had concerns. And as an attorney, I know how that can impact your ability to get justice when you have to spend so much time fielding questions about fake news, or if there's just information out there that is misleading on your case. So here, can we start with your title and what you've been referred to here as a family advocate? Can you describe like what is your role in the case?
Well, right now there isn't anyone necessarily that Shanquella's family is attempting to sue or file a civil lawsuit against. So our role in the case, the team's role in the case, is just to assist the family as victims of a violent crime, as losing a family member overseas, help them through this process. And particularly because obviously Shanquella was a Black woman victim of a crime, those cases totally get swept under the rug. They aren't covered a lot by media, which makes it harder to get justice in these situations, especially overseas. So just making sure that the case is being covered by the media so that it pushes and keeps the pressure on Mexican authorities and authorities in America to thoroughly investigate the case.
Right, because initially in this case, it's my understanding that Mexican authorities were not seeking to bring charges or hadn't even necessarily determined that a crime had occurred. Is that accurate?
So initially, the Mexican authorities essentially released her body to her family, released the death certificate, and there was nothing because there was no statements or evidence. The people that were with her on the trip essentially came back and told her parents that she passed away from alcohol poisoning. It wasn't until the video came out and the video was actually given to the Mexican authorities, and with all the pressure that was placed on the State Department, et cetera, that the case started to be investigated and the people involved started to be investigated. So initially there wasn't anything other than what the people that were there said, which was, she was having some issue due to alcohol poisoning. And then the video came out, the initial video.
Now, how did that video come out?
One of the parties leaked it.
Okay. Was it on one of their, because I was assuming it looked like a story. So I was assuming that somebody had taken it and posted it to their story. It was, and then perhaps someone else screenshotted it or something like that.
Well, essentially one of the people involved released the video via social media, and then it went viral, obviously.
Okay. I was going to ask if they had released it, for example, to her family in an attempt to help her family find justice. But it sounds like, no, it was simply they released it to social media.
Yeah, I in the case, if you've been following it, which I'm sure you have, there's different people, obviously, that were there. There was 6 people,
6. Yeah.
and they have, released statements, done lives, different
Mhm.
interviews on social media. So there was a lot of information out there. It's just a matter of knowing what's true and what's not true, and what is, what are they saying to kind of protect themselves, and what not. I think when there's an active open investigation into the death of someone that you were with, at you were the last person that was with them, I think out of respect, the first person that you would want to give information to would be the family. But that's
Absolutely.
not how it was handled in this case.
Because it seems to me that with with the video initially simply being released by one of the parties that was there to their social media, seems to me like they found it entertaining. Like that was their entertainment, and they were like, hey, let's post this in the way that people post fight videos all the time, because they particularly find the fight interesting, including when I watched it.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it was the person recording who actually was saying to Shanquella, come on, get up, fight back. Was that your understanding from listening to it?
There is some audio where they're saying you're not going to hit back. My opinion, obviously because I wasn't there and I haven't spoken to the
Mhm.
parties, is that if the way that this crime happened and the way that kind of the story was given to Shanquella's family, there had to be some guilty conscience there. And I think sometimes if you're not you, but groups that are involved in something like this, the bigger the group, the bigger the possibility that someone is going to tell, or
Mhm.
information is going to get out.
Right.
So I think, I don't know if it was for entertainment. I think what happened was absolutely demonic in terms of the way that she was beaten, the way that the person in the background is recording it, the way that they're talking to her. The fact that any person would have to lose their life in this way when they're on a vacation is horrible.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so, but in terms of the motivation for releasing the video, might have been, guilty conscience.
Got you.
Mhm.
Got you. And when you say, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify.
Mhm.
By release, you're saying releasing it to social media, not releasing it to the family?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, got you. I understand. And were there 2 videos? One of the bloggers are reporting that there's a second video out there.
There's another video. Well, there's multiple videos because there's all the other videos that the other parties made post saying, showing their plane tickets and their movements and all that
Mhm.
stuff. But there's a second video kind of just showing Shanquella's like her own video recording kind
Okay.
of the villa and of the
Mm.
overall mood, and you kind of get the vibe and understanding that she was there to kind of have a good time, and
Yeah, exactly.
was in a perfectly good mood prior
Were
to
there
this.
any other fight videos?
No, there
Okay.
haven't been other fight videos released.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because that was part of the area that was like particularly questionable, where we weren't sure at all what was going on. Now, another part of it is, so there was there's the various different videos, and one of the videos was, I know I'm mispronouncing his name, but I believe the guy was like Najir was one of the um guys who was there, but basically it was one of her friends, and he was claiming that that he wasn't there when any of this happened. What's your understanding?
Um, she was, my understanding from the family are that only one of the individuals that was there, which was a male, was her actual friend. The other people she was meeting or were acquaintances with, but they weren't like her travel buddies or like her homegirls or anything like that. That only one of the male people that was attending the trip was an actual friend that she knew from home.
Got you. Okay. And how do you pronounce his name? I was pronouncing it wrong, I'm sure.
Not Nahid. Sorry.
Okay, gotcha. Well, as we mispronounce it, we all know who we're talking about.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Um, in addition, so there was a lot of the kind of fake news, and the discussions have stemmed from a particular journalist, Mexican journalist,
Mm-hmm.
who was claiming that he has this inside source. I believe his name is Gerardo or something along those lines.
Mm.
One of the things that he claimed is that he saw or was given some police report, and that's where a portion of his reporting was coming from.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen this police report that he's allegedly?
There is a report that was completed by an investigator.
Okay.
It doesn't have much details other than saying that statements were taken, what time the ambulance came, what time the medic came. So I'm not sure specifically
Okay.
what the journalist was saying. There is
Okay. I think he's full of lies. Okay, so let me give you a
okay.
summary.
So I'm like, I don't know
One of the things that this crazy person said, I won't say he's crazy, but he probably is. One of the things that he was saying is that part of the reason that that Shanquella was in a fight with Dejanay, or how you say her name, was because Dejanay was transgender.
Mm.
Is that accurate? Have you heard that as being part of the ground for their?
I've heard people saying that the person who was fighting her was a transgender person. I don't, at the end of the day, I don't think that's a reason for a fight. I think a lot of people got confused because in Mexico, when a woman is killed, it's called femicide. Homicide, because that's like a subsection, because they do have like an actual subsection for when women are killed in Mexico, like people who obviously are women, but sometimes maybe people who work in nightlife or human trafficking or something like that. It has their own set of investigators for female homicides, which they call femicide. So I don't know if that's why the kind of rumor started, because they were like,
okay, possibly lost in translation or a misunderstanding of how those laws work. Such as like here, we do have laws that protect, well, they're supposed to protect transgender people and the LGBT, etc. Okay, I understand. No, he also discussed that there was an issue with money, and that it was believed that Shanquella had stolen money from the other parties in the house, that or something along those lines. Had you heard any of that as a theory?
No, I didn't hear anything from her family about her steal money or needing to steal any money. As a matter of fact, I think that what was disclosed by the parties to the family when they were calling her mom, when they were still in Mexico, they were saying they were going to take money from her purse to pay for the nurse that came to the room.
I see. Okay. So that may have been where it came from. And there was also a report that Shanquella brought thousands of dollars, perhaps $17,000 to their country. Had you heard about that? Is that accurate?
No, I haven't heard that at all. So, and that there's no record of that. And definitely, I'm sure if she brought that much money through customs, someone would know. That would be
right. Exactly. Because through customs, you're supposed to bring under $10,000 unless you declare it, of course, and then the IRS gets involved. But to that end, there's like two of the versions that aren't really making sense. Are that one of the versions discussed that there was a doctor there, and that a doctor had advised calling the ambulance, but then a second version talked about and that the doctor was there all the way through until basically it was determined she wasn't alive, or that the ambulance needed to be called. And then a second version discusses a maid finding her. Did a maid find her deceased or non-responsive?
Essentially, the story is that a medic or a nurse practitioner type person was called to the scene once she was non-responsive.
I see. Okay, after
all the parties, and they attempted to do CPR, etc., and it was to no avail. All the parties were then had to actually leave because they were essentially in a scene where an investigation, they had to remove her and all of that stuff. So whether or not a maid actually found her body is one of those internet comments.
Got you.
I'm sure there was someone there, cleaning the room and dealing with those matters. But essentially the story is that a medic was there, an ambulance actually took her body from the location,
Got you.
but
Okay.
that none of the people were present for that.
Got you. So we don't know if it was a maid that found her and then decided that a medic should be called. But sorry, let me clarify. Was it like a medic that came over, or was it like a doctor that did house calls that initially was tending to her?
Well, essentially, in Mexico, what Shanquella's mom was advised was that they wanted to take her to the hospital because of what was how she was, her responsiveness,
Mhm.
and that it was easier or better, less expensive to to have a doctor come there as opposed to
Mm,
trying to transport her to a hospital.
got you. As far as
So
the friend's understanding of the cost, is that
the
right?
friends relaying, yes, to the mom
Relaying that.
because they were calling and saying, "Hey, we need money to, move her around and this and that." And then they eventually just called a doctor, nurse. The only reason why I'm
Whoever
using
it is.
multiple terms is because I don't know the actual person's degrees and how it translates in
Okay.
terms of what they were. But someone in the medical field eventually came, and then an ambulance had to come.
Understood. So, okay, so the friends were in communication, or someone, at least one of the friends, was in communication with her family while they were there and had informed the family that she was basically ill enough that they needed to get her to a hospital. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So,
because of the alcohol poisoning. But then that was dispelled when the actual death certificate came out and said that her back was snapped, her
got
spine.
you.
Mhm.
Understood. Okay, that clarifies that aspect of it. Yeah, because they tried to part of the indication was that the nurse, sorry, that the ambulance had been telling the friends, one of the versions of the ambulance, I'm sorry, is that the doctor who did the house calls was telling the friends, hey, she really needs to go to the ambulance, I mean the hospital. She really needs to get there, and that the friends did not want to bring her. But this actually clarifies and makes more sense that they were basically trying to decide what would be the best way to handle it, because in that is true that in Mexico you have to pay in advance if you want an ambulance to come get you. They make you pay, or you get yourself there. um to that end, I wish I had another one. So when you were there on the ground, what's the biggest update? Like, what are the main facts that basically you discovered that clarify some of, I guess, generally the questions that most people have had surrounding the case?
I think most of the questions that people have surrounding the case is, why hasn't anybody been arrested? Why hasn't, there's a video, it shows that there's foul play, that there was a fight involved, and that she ended up dead. So these people should obviously just be brought into custody. But because even though an
Oh,
arrest
you
warrant,
broke up just a little bit. Can you say that again? That last part.
because the event occurred in another country, there are some added barriers that have to be resolved before they can just go pick the people up. That's why, if anyone who follows Tamika Mallory and Until Freedom, who's part of the team, she posted saying, please tag the State Department because they issued a statement initially saying there was no foul play. Please tag the senators. Please
Oh
write letters and call the
wow.
embassy to put pressure on the State Department, because they have to essentially permit Mexican authorities to take the people out of America in order to, which is called extradition, for them to be tried, investigated, questioned, etc., in Mexico. And so that piece has not occurred yet.
And initially, so there's are some bloggers who are saying that someone has already been arrested. That's not true, correct?
No, an arrest warrant has been issued.
Yeah, just the warrant has been issued, but the person has not been taken into custody. And that is because this extradition process that you just described, it takes a while, correct?
Yes, and the person who's being extradited has the right to have an attorney. They have a right to fight the extradition. So even when they are taken into custody, then there could be additional time because they have their right to kind of contest the extradition and ask to be tried here as opposed to in Mexico. So it does add a layer of complication that we're dealing with an international crime, essentially.
Got you. And at this point, there's only one arrest warrant that's been issued, not two, correct?
Right. One.
Okay. Just one, you guys, not two. No one has been arrested. They can or taken into custody, and it's going to be a long time for them to even do so because I am certain. Now we think that it's Dejanay. Are you allowed to say who it is that the warrant was issued for?
Well, I don't know.
Oh, okay. You're not sure of it either.
Right.
Got you. Well, I think most of us assume that it's Dejanay because of the fact that she's the one in the video that's fighting Shanquella. But even still, she's going to get a chance to hire a lawyer and to fight it. But most importantly, I'm pretty sure she don't want to go to prison in Mexico and doesn't want to have to fight her case in Mexico. So she'd probably do her best to keep it to stay here in America. Whereas I did read that the family would prefer that the culprits, everyone that involved that, killed their daughter, that they would get tried in Mexico. Is that right? They prefer Mexico?
I don't know how accurate that is.
Okay.
I think a lot of times, especially with super emotional situations, especially this type of situation where the culprits or the parties or the people involved actually went to the home of the mom and gave her, a story that now in hindsight, obviously was incorrect details, incorrect facts. I think that it's easy. You want whatever you think is worse, the worst punishment, or, the highest punishment, the most justice for losing your child in such a violent and horrific way. So I could see why, they would think, Mexico would be worse versus the United States and things like that. But I think, part of the issue too is that if it's in Mexico, obviously they're going to have to go to Mexico to kind of, to view it and to see it and to make sure and things like that. So that makes it a little difficult logistically. I think that as long as there's a thorough investigation done, that the two countries are coordinating in terms of the investigation and that it is not being swept under the rug, then my job is being done, and the family is going to be content that the truth is going to come out about what happened to their daughter.
Okay. What would justice look like for the family?
I think justice looks like all the facts, them finding out how their daughter spent her last moments, specifically what happened and who's responsible for what happened to her, and whoever is responsible, obviously doing some time.
Now, and obviously right now, obviously in the film, in the video, there was one person that was fighting, at least, physically fighting with Shanquella. But we watched, anybody who's watched First 48 knows that if you are a co-conspirator or if you help someone cover it up, you can be, at least in America, you can be just as liable as the person who made the final blow. Do you know whether they're investigating multiple people or are they focused primarily on one person?
I think that they're going to have to speak to and take statements from everyone that was present and involved in the last hours of her life, including, the medics, people who cleaned the room afterwards, all those people, because now it's a crime scene because there's a criminal investigation going on. So I think everyone's going to have to be brought in and rounded up and have statements taken from everyone, and then culpability will kind of be decided.
And putting on your I know you're the advocate for the family, but putting on your criminal attorney hat, can you, there are a number of people who had questions regarding, is there a chance that America could bring charges against these potential defendants if Mexico won't, or if Mexico, basically if Mexico won't do it? Can you speak to how that would work and if there is that potential?
We have been talking about that, kind of kicking around the idea of, because there was a cell phone involved, obviously, because it was recorded. Could it be considered a federal crime and all of those things? But rest assured that, the feds are involved in terms of investigating, reviewing information, and having that information passed down to the authorities in Mexico. So to the extent that there is a federal law that was broken, the box is open and the feds are diligently working on that for now. And that's why it's so important for platforms like yours, which I super appreciate using your platform for this, and people on the internet, not necessarily to get caught up in the rumors, but to do exactly what Tamika Mallory has described on her Until Freedom page. Put pressure on the State Department to make sure that it doesn't get swept under the rug. Still keep talking about it in terms of, making sure that extradition happens, because that takes one government to agree with another government. And we've seen from Brittany Griner's case that can take a long time just for those
Yes.
conversations to happen, because it's
Yes.
involving two different political bodies.
Mm-hmm. And, as I was thinking about this case, and particularly the issue of if Mexico is not going to make sure that there's justice, will America, and how can we, pressure? Because obviously we can't control the Mexican government, and they could care less about social media, but obviously America does care. What came to mind is the case of, I believe it's Heather Mack. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Heather is a biracial girl who was raised in, I believe it was Detroit. Basically, so a Black child. She had a white mother. She goes over to Thailand. Her mom takes her on vacation. And while there, Heather and her boyfriend kill the mama. They kill the mother because she claims that the mother was abusive and a variety of things, but they kill the mother. However, in Thailand, she only gets 6 years. She serves 6 years in prison for the murder. And America, and then she gets back. She gets released, and while she's in prison over there in Thailand, she's posting videos to social media that really make the prison that she's in look like she's running the prison. So basically, it didn't look like it was much of a punishment. So as a result, when she gets back, America has an indictment for her. Federal courts charged her, and currently her attorney is actually fighting it, claiming that one, she's already served for this. Yeah, double jeopardy effectively. She's already served time for this. And the law does say you cannot be charged in America for an offense that you were already charged for in the other country. But currently, what the feds are doing and have done is they said, no, you served time for murder or manslaughter, whatever it was. We are charging you with conspiracy, because of the fact that she got to Thailand a day earlier and her boyfriend was still back home in Detroit, and they used a cell phone to communicate with each other to discuss basically how they were going to handle her mother. And so the feds were saying, because that was done on American soil, even though only he was in America, that's close enough. And they used the fact that it was conspiracy, as well as they're charging her with, I think it's like accessory after the fact, because I guess they destroyed some things, and they talked about, obstruction of justice, I think it is, because they talked about, okay, this is what we're going to say and this is what you shouldn't say.
Right.
So when I thought about that and how quick the feds were to charge her, and obviously the victim there was her mother, who was a very, very wealthy white woman. I think her mother left her $4 million when she died. I was very disappointed to see that, the State Department initially said, there's nothing to see here and we won't be involved, because clearly they can pick and choose when they feel that the victim is valuable enough, that they seem to pick and choose when to get involved. So, first I wanted to thank you for the work that you and your team are doing to bring attention to this, because I think what a lot of people may not realize is within the law, if you let one of these slide, it ends up devaluing all of us. It becomes like a standard, because they then see that, like, oh, well, in this similar case, it was a similar type of victim and it wasn't a big deal. We never brought charges, etc. So then they tend to devalue other people that look just like that. So particularly here, I wanted to know, what can we do? How can we support the family? What do you need us to do? Give us a call to action, girl. What can we do?
Yeah, I think the call to action is to continue to put pressure on the State Department, calling the embassy, calling the senators to say, hey, listen, we want extradition. We want the person to be extradited. We want the Mexican authorities to be able to investigate this case. And you absolutely make a great point with Heather's case. The parties involved brought the clothes, brought her suitcase to her mom. So there's things that can be done. But I think it's just continuing to put pressure on the people who are making those decisions on whether or not charges will be filed, whether or not investigations will be had, in order to support the family. And I know the family has their own GoFundMe to kind of like, I'm assuming in the future they're going to have different expenses and things to do in relation to the investigation. So supporting them in that way that they've asked to be supported, but definitely continuing to, say her name and make sure that the case remains as a high profile case. Because a lot of times after it loses the news cycle, nobody kind of talks about it. Everybody definitely, kind of moves on to the next thing, because there's so many things, because, I consider this to be the most important work of our time. But we definitely can continue to put pressure on the proper authorities here to make sure that the investigation is done thoroughly.
Gotcha. And what's your website? Where can we go to follow you and your firm and just know more about what you are working on?
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at Not Just a Lawyer on all social media platforms, SueAnnRobinson.com or FrontlineFirm.com.
Oh, and also just to wrap it up before we go, one of the other elements that some people had talked about or discussed was that I see one of the comments here that was talking about the discussion regarding bringing charges or not, is that oftentimes, like, once there's a little bit of momentum that goes, people assume like, oh yeah, it's getting handled.
Right. She's
but here, what department is it, or what division within our government is the one that would be in control over this?
The FBI and the U.S. State Department.
Okay. FBI and the State Department. And y'all, with the State Department, there's so much that goes on in the State Department that is, vital to our lives. And it's really important that they have good representation in the State Department. So if you are a person who has interest in like any type of international affairs, I really encourage you guys to consider employment with them. That's actually where you can become employed as a diplomat. So I have a friend of a friend who's a diplomat, African-American, went to FAMU, I believe. Yes. And she's a diplomat through the State Department. And one of the things that she does is literally, she gets assigned to a different country. She lives there, and it is her job to get paid from our government to just help other countries like America, or want to do business. Well, more specifically, want to do business with America. They pay really, really well. They give you housing and all of this stuff. But it also just internationally, it lets people understand that there are Black people around the world in these high positions of leadership, and that we have so much to offer. So it is particularly important for this case and cases like them that there are people in high positions who have the ability to give us what we want. Effectively.
Absolutely. And definitely go to Until Freedom IG, Tamika Mallory's page. She has like very specific people to at. If you're doing posts about the case, who to at and who to call, the phone number specifically, who to call. So definitely do that for sure.
Absolutely. Because if Mexico plays around, girl, we're getting some federal charges, because the feds know how to charge people with anything. Hell, they even got the Chrisleys. The Chrisley family, they were like the white Cosbys of reality shows.
Right.
The Chrisleys, you can get anyone. And also they had to, once they came, the defendants here or the other friends, once they came home, they were colluding. They were, trying to get their story straight. I mean, from whether it's an obstruction of justice charge or what have you. If they talk, I don't know if they've talked to the feds yet, but I'm sure they've lied. It's actually a federal offense to lie to a federal agent. Whereas if it's a state charge in most states, that's not necessarily a crime, correct? Just lying to a cop.
Lying to a police officer?
Yes. Not when you're not under oath.
Oh, okay.
I mean, just like if they come, if they say, come on down, I want you to come downtown and we're going to interview you. In a lot of states, if you don't tell the truth in there, it's going to bite you other ways, but it's not considered.
Right. Get you. But you're saying specifically there's a statute against lying to federal authorities.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Perjury. That's why Trump refused to talk to them.
Yes.
Well,
45, he's a whole other set of bag of worms.
Oh yes, we could talk about him all day, but I digress. But I really appreciate you, Sue Ann. Okay, so I have to have you back for our girls chat. I'm doing a weekly girls chat where I have at some point I'll invite some guys too, but we're having ladies from within the law, and we sit and we talk about hot topics, and you'll get to see all of Sue Ann's personality and why she's both beautiful and fun and funny. And I can't wait to see you on Ready to Love and see your dating journey. So thank you again. We really appreciate you, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Appreciate you more.
Bye.
Bye, my love. Bye, guys. Girl, it's not legal to kill anybody in Mexico. Let's not do that.
There we go. Exactly. It ain't legal.
It ain't.